Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at the tradition of the Yule log. Something that for a lot of us is sort of lost in the mists of time. A lot of us don't understand anymore. What is the Yule log? What is it for? What is that tradition about? So that's what we're going to talk about today. For the Christmas season, what significance does the Yule log have? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit today about the tradition of the Yule log, and it's one that we ourselves today have largely lost. There's very few people that really do a Yule log anymore. And even in the early 17th century, for those that did practice the tradition, as it was still very common by this time period, I believe, we believe it largely had lost its origin, the kind of the reason for it in the first place. And so what we're going to take a little bit closer look at today is what is the Yule log? What's it about? And what we actually see initially, as it goes back quite a long ways. Its origins are quite old. Pre-Christian, pagan, mostly Western Europe, but it isn't any one cultural origin necessarily. It sort of evolves out of a collection of Gallic and Celtic traditions, and basically what it comes down to is sacrifice. The idea being that some disaster has befallen your society, whether it's a drought and famine as a result of a poor growing season, or pestilence and plague or conflict or what have you, whatever's going on. There's some horrible thing that has happened that is outside of your control. And the presumption being made that it is as a result of the gods being displeased or angry about something. And so now it is up to you to make some sort of, to appease them in some manner. And so in the right circumstances, we will see the idea of human sacrifice coming forward. And this is something that an awful lot of early human cultures share. But this idea that, a sacrifice should be made. And in this particular instance, it is very commonly the idea of a willing sacrifice, and very often a very important one. Sacrificial kings, essentially, or at least important civic leadership, societal leadership. If you're going to sacrifice a person to try to fix the famine or the plague or what have you, it's not much of a sacrifice unless it is, for the person being sacrificed, it's a big deal. But as a society as a whole, what could be a bigger deal than giving up your king or similar? And so we see this idea of, again, this sort of sacrificial move, this person sacrificing themselves for the greater good. They've volunteered, or in some instances they've been volunteered. But there tends to be an awful lot of festivity that surrounds it. I mean, this is a big deal. This is a momentous occasion. You're going to go out of your way to make it as big an occasion as possible. So there's going to be a lot of festivity, a lot of revelry, and part of it is, again, just recognizing how big and important this moment is, but also, since this individual is being sacrificed for the greater good, you can, at the very least, send them out with a bang, and so big party, big festivity leading up to that moment. These traditions evolve and change and over time, and eventually we will see the ideas start to come about. Maybe it doesn't have to be a person, right? It's all about that acknowledgement and that the idea of sacrifice. But maybe it doesn't have to be a person. And so we start to see the idea of representative sacrifice come in. And that's where we begin to see the evolution of the Yule log. So now you have a stand-in for the person, essentially, this facsimile, this representation. And ideally it should be a fairly stately affair. It's a substantial piece of tree, if you will. A large log, a very nice one, and will then be dressed up for the occasion. And so wrapped in garland and this sort of thing, and typically the evergreens that are traditionally associated with a lot of these winter festivities anyway, again, going back even pre-Christian into Saturnalia and a lot of the other pagan winter traditions, anything evergreen has always been significant because it remains living through the time of year in which everything else appears to be dead. It is that promise that life will return to the world, and especially things like holly and mistletoe and that sort of thing that actually bear fruit in the wintertime when everything else appears to be dead. Holly and ivy become associated with the masculine and feminine side of things with those traditions. And so, holly and ivy and similar being used to decorate that Yule log, and then very oftentimes further, anointed with expensive oils or spiced wine or expensive import spices themselves, that kind of thing. Because again, it's an occasion, it's a sacrifice. If you just putting a piece of wood on the fire, not much of a sacrifice. If you're dropping some serious money on what you're putting in there with the log, again, expensive import spices, high-end wines or oils or what have you, you've made an investment. It's a sacrifice. It's not a human life, but you are giving something up. And again, as these traditions evolve, very oftentimes we start to lose the origin of the tradition in sort of the mists of time. By the early 17th century, as we start to see more and more references to the Yule log being done specifically in England, it's very likely that by this point, most Englishmen that are practicing the tradition don't really know the origin of it, aren't really aware of this concept of human sacrifice and sacrificial kings that are, centuries and eons earlier in their ancestry. And so it evolves into this sort of, it's almost like a good luck charm. You do the Yule log and it brings you good fortune in the coming year and that sort of thing. Again, still hinting at its origin, but has now evolved into a new tradition in and of itself. And gradually over time, it too falls by the wayside. There's still bits and pieces of it around today. Most folks today probably don't really know a whole lot about what the Yule log is. What is it about? It's in a few of our Christmas carols, see the blazing Yule before us, that sort of thing. But a lot of us are probably left wondering, what is that all about? Well, that's what we sought to address here today. Talk a little bit about that Yule log and its origin. And it is a nice time of year for a fire. So why not? Right? Why not go out and get yourself a decent log and wrap some garland around it and have yourself a Yule log. That must be mine being delivered just now. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe and leave us a comment below, and have a happy holiday.